We can't tell you how frustrating it was for us to upload our podcast when we first got started. The websites were clunky, we had data limits, and it was all so confusing. That is, until we found Zencastr. Zencastr is an online platform built for podcasters to not only upload their podcasts, track their listeners, connect their audience, and so much more. Zencastr plans have no upload or download limits, so your cost won't grow as you do. Embed their player that automatically updates to show the latest episode of your show. Zencastr lets you see your podcast downloads along with your traffic, website, and Google Analytics. Zencastr also supports multiple podcasts under one account. The best part is, if you already have a podcast on another platform, you can switch to Zencastr with a one-click importer, all free of charge. So what are you waiting for? Head over to howtomakeapodcast.co/Zencastr to start saving time and money with your podcast today. Hello and welcome to How to Make a Podcast. My name is Nick Miller and I am joined by my best good buddy, Mr. John Bunn. John, how are you doing on this glorious new day? I don't know if it's really glorious, but it's a new day.
I'm doing really well, as usual. I'm always so pumped up by the growth and the numbers in How to Make a Podcast. And last week's episode, people were really excited about just kind of breaking down how we did our first 2,500 downloads. We've since passed that. And so, you know, it's neat to see just this community growing. And I just want to say thanks to all of you out there that are listening and downloading and sharing. We see a lot of people joining the Facebook group it says invited by. And so as you continue to invite people and as that continues to grow, it's been really neat. You know, it's been neat to be accepted, not necessarily as podcast experts, but like two guys that are doing things well. And so I sit here, you know, I sent Nick a text yesterday and was just like, I've said this before, even on this podcast, but just like, is your life just like unreal right now? And he's like,
he really did.
It's unreal.
Yeah,
and I was
did.
like, I know, it's so unreal. Like, how is this our life? And, you know, there's orders coming in every day on both of our podcasts in different things. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But my stance on life right now is just like, I can't believe that this is what I get to do. And that's what we're here for. We want you to be able to fulfill your dreams as a podcaster as well. So yeah. Nick, I'm good. How are you?
I'm really good. All the things that you say, I will ditto those and agree with you. You know, it's cool to be able to sit down and just talk and share about our experiences and help other people and help them achieve, you know, their goals and their aspirations and stuff. You know, we launched the podcast Blueprint course and we're having so much conversation, you know, going on within that community and just seeing people learning and applying all the things that they're learning. It's really cool. It's really amazing. We're just so stoked to be here. On last week's episode, we talked about how we got our first 2,500 downloads, and this one is kind of a continuation from that one. So if you haven't listened to that one yet, that was episode 8, I believe. Yeah, episode 8. So if you want to listen to that one, check that one out. And then we're going to move forward with that one. But, you know, kind of to recap real quickly what we talked about last week's episode, we talked about figuring out your niche, figuring out your pillars. And what we mean by the pillars are, you know, the subjects that fit within your niche that you can always come back to. We talk about building a brand and a look. And then from all of that, like that was the foundation that we laid before we even started recording a podcast. And then we did that, and then we started building some hype, and we started growing the audience, and we talked about, you know, that, and we'll get into that a little bit more in this episode. So we did all of these things, and that's whenever we start moving the flywheel. We start pushing that boulder up the mountain, if you want to, you know, think of it that way, so that we can start getting our loyal fans and building a loyal fan base. So today we want to spend a lot of time talking about, you know, the good things, the momentum, the hype that can come from building, you know, your own following, you know, people, raving fans and all that stuff. So that's what we're going to spend some time talking about today. John, where would you like to start?
Well, when I'm thinking back through how we got going with How to Make a Podcast and how quickly we've gotten to the number that we've gotten to, and then I think back to our other podcast and just some of the things that we learned along the way, by building, like we talked about last week, this foundation, getting people, into our ecosystem, that's the first step, is like building this brand, this content, this stuff, these ads. And then it's like, okay, now people are here. Are they going to stay? And what are you going to do to continue to keep them, interacting and keep them excited? And, we hope that the How to Make a Podcast group and this podcast is something that you can take and say, well, I can apply these principles to my podcast. You might not be an educator, but you might, say, oh, I can run an ad and it would help me this way. I can build a funnel. I should do a Facebook group, or I should. And so, we looked at it and we said, okay, now we've got people coming to our podcast. We want to continue the conversation with that person. The more that you can continue that conversation and get them involved in your ecosystem, your community, the more that they become a loyal fan, a loyal follower, your tribe. You've seen and read books probably about building a tribe. The more people you can get into that ecosystem that are real fans of what you're doing, the more success you're going to have. And so,
absolutely,
with How to Film Weddings, we have right now, I think it's like almost 7,000 people in a wedding videographers Facebook group. And then with How to Make a Podcast, we're already over 2,500. Podcasting is a much bigger, niche than wedding videography. But I think it'd be cool, Nick, to kind of break down why we decided to do Facebook groups and what we do inside of them to build and continue with momentum and keep the flywheel turning, because the more that you do in there, the more people listen to your podcast, the more they get. And it just becomes their ecosystem that they spend all this time in, and they're loyal fans. So,
yeah. So whenever it comes to Facebook and, growing that following, I think what most podcasters do is whenever you get started, you go and you create all of these social media things that you can do. You get your Instagram, you get your Twitter, you create a Facebook page, and then you start trying to promote however it is that you can promote your podcast. That's absolutely fine. There's nothing against that. But I think a lot of people don't see and understand the value of a Facebook group for your specific podcast. Here's why. A page can be very helpful for, you have to have one to run ads. It kind of shows that you're a brand, that you're, out there in the world, that you're a legitimate, something. But the problem is, because Facebook is a pay-to-play platform, right? Pay-to-play, meaning in order for your Facebook page to show up or to just show up to people, you need to pay for it. Okay. And it's something, John, isn't it somewhere like 3 to 6% of people actually see page organic posts? It's something very small.
It's very, very small.
So just for you to understand that, you have 100 fans of your Facebook page and you post your new podcast, anywhere from 2 to 6 people are going to see that organically. Okay, that's not much of a reach at all. However, if you have a Facebook group and you have 100 people in there, it is going to be very easy for all 100 of those to see whenever you have posted something new. So they can all digest it and learn from it and interact with it. Okay. So that's where we have seen such a huge value in the groups, is that whenever we have a new episode, and really sharing new episodes is kind of a small function of how we use our Facebook groups. But right then, when you share these new episodes, people can check them out pretty easily. But what we use the groups for is, one, we ask questions, to say, hey, what topics do you want to hear us talk about? What things are you interested in? These 2 episodes, actually, because John asked the question, what is the subject that you want to learn from? People said, how to grow my podcast. And so that's why we're sharing these things. We have daily threads, just so you can interact with one another, so you can talk with each other, so you can share recent episodes or episode artwork, or show off your studio space, or, what in our wedding film group, we have people that are sharing their films in these, threads. And so if you are interacting within your group and posting and commenting and sharing, like, have you ever been in a group that is someone else's, and then when the owner of that group like responds to you or talks to you, like it kind of makes you feel cool a little bit. At least it does with me. And so they're seeing that you're a real person and you can interact with them and talk to them. And the more that you do that, the more likely they are to be like, oh yeah, this podcast, this person talked to me. They like me. They're listening to me. And you can really grow that following. John, I just talked a lot.
Yeah, you did, but that's good. Yeah, for us, like my mind, I can just see whenever, like, if you're out there and you have a podcast, and we're not necessarily saying you have to have a Facebook group, but the things like Nick is saying that you can do with these groups, creating events inside of the groups, going live inside the groups, all of it comes down to me. Some people don't want their face on camera. They just want a simple audio podcast. That's fine. But what it really comes down to is like growing your audience. The real growth comes through community and creating some type of a tribe and some type of a following that is able to interact with either you or your, other listeners. And so what that looks like for us, like how Nick is saying, whenever I was really thinking through the strategy for how to film weddings and now how to make a podcast, it was like, I just want to be the place where people go to talk shop about my subject. I want people that are very like-minded to all be able to interact with each other. And when we started How to Film Weddings Facebook group, Nick and I were in there every day just responding to hundreds of comments and just moderating and doing. And after a while, though, people started interacting with each other, and we're mainly just moderating the group at this point. We'll jump in and answer questions for people and stuff. Yeah. But what that does for you, if you're a person that is creating this group of people that is following, your podcast, and you're able to jump in there and ask questions and pull them and do all these different things. It is something like Nick is saying. If the owner of if the podcast host responds to you or says your name in a live or something like that, you feel a part of the tribe. You feel like you're a part of the family, and that's kind of how, like with us in our groups, like in How to Make a Podcast, the group, we are very involved, and we want you to know that we care about you and your podcast. We're interacting, we're listening to your podcast, and that gives us the ability to build loyalty with you, because I think a lot of people get real hyped up and they don't plan a strategy out for their first 6 months of podcasting. So, by being consistent in your podcast and having a weekly episode for 6 months, having a Facebook group where you can interact with different people, and also having some type of way to get new people's names into your email list so you can start moving all these different pieces together. This is what is, like, if you just are consistent in those things, your podcast will grow and continue to grow and continue to grow. And so, the group side of things, the community behind that was the key for us that kind of unlocked the ability to always have fresh content, to always be able to know who other people wanted us to have on the show, topics that they wanted to hear about, and then we could also just dig deeper with certain people. And loyalty is what it all really is about for us. We have said it before, but we would rather have 10, 20, 100 loyal fans. We'd rather have that than 1,000 just, oh yeah, I didn't even know I was in your group. And so to do that, you have to create hype. You have to create a buzz around what you're doing and an excitement. And you, as the host of the podcast, have to be the one that puts in that work.
Yeah, definitely. And we have a lot more to say on this topic of building the hype and growing your following. And we will get to that right after this break.
If you have a pulse, you probably hate the subject of taxes and running the bookkeeping portion of your business. But like it or not, if you want to be a successful podcaster, you are going to have to pay attention to your numbers. But don't worry, we have the answer for you, Core Financial. Our friends over at Core Financial have taken the pressure off of us so we can focus on what we love doing most, running our podcast. They take care of all of our taxes, monthly bookkeeping, financial plans, and make sure we take full advantage of all of the tax benefits we qualify for. It just feels good knowing we aren't going to get a big surprise during tax season. If you are serious about building a business with your podcast, head on over to howtomakeapodcast.co/core to see what they can do for you.
So you've got everything you need for your podcast. You've recorded your audio and video. You're so excited, But wait, you don't know how to master the audio or edit the video of your podcast. We know someone who can help. The podcast editors. Picture this. You record both audio and video for your podcast. You upload it to your remote editor, and a few days later, your podcast is ready for you to upload and push to the world. What will you do with your extra time? Connect with sponsors? Grow your Facebook group? Start that project or even course you have dreamed of for months? The possibilities are endless. We are blown away by the podcast editors and love working with them and using their services. They can edit audio, video, or both for your podcast. Don't get stuck trying to do this on your own. Get in touch with the podcast editors today. If you'd like to save 50% off of your first project, head over to howtomakeapodcast.co/thepodcasteditors. Hey, we're back from break, and we are going to jump into our question of the day presented by the podcast editors. If you need someone to edit your podcast, either audio, video, or both, we recommend the podcast editors. Head over to howtomakeapodcast.co/thepodcasteditors to find out more info. John, our question of the day is this: how can I grow my Facebook group?
Yes, love this. So I think a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to have to manage that. I don't want to have to deal with that. And if you're in that boat, I would strongly have you consider the benefits of it. But for us, at the beginning, we organically grew our group. We created the group, and Nick and I both invited people that were our friends to join the group and asked them in the group if you could invite anybody that you think would want to join the group. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of Facebook groups now. Facebook has commercials on TV about groups, and like they're really pushing groups. And so you probably get added to lots of groups now. And so we were ahead of that curve with How to Film Weddings. But, with How to Make a Podcast, we did a little bit of both. We invited people that we thought and knew wanted to do podcasting to the group. But then we also made it a part of our paid ad strategy. And inside of your inside of your actual podcast, we always promote, like, if you're not a part of our group, go search How to Make a Podcast and you can join our group. And so you can always be pointing to that. That's always a great call to action in your episodes. You can have it linked at the top of your show notes. But ultimately, anything that you can do to point people to join in that group is great, and that's what you should do to grow it. But what's really going to grow it is adding value to people by having things like the group needs to actually add value to people. Mm-hmm. And what is it doing? How is it building them up? How is it making them enjoy their day, or whatever it is for you and your podcast? If all it is you pushing your podcast in a group, people won't want to be a part of that. But if you look at it as, let me create a conversation around my topic, I want to create this conversation, then create threads maybe once every few days or every couple days around specific topics or doing certain things that help people if you're an expert in a field. But like growing your group comes from consistently being in it, consistently pushing it on all the different platforms, emailing your email lists. If you do paid ads, like pointing people to the group. That's how we've grown it. Anything I missed out, Nick?
No. And the thing that I really want to stress whenever it comes to having anything, social media, having a group, what is your intention behind it? Like people, as we've talked about, whenever, I want to start this new business venture, I want to start this new podcast, I want to start this new thing, we're like, I need to get all the Facebook account, all the social media accounts. I need to set up all this stuff, but people aren't intentional with what they want to do with it. And if the only reason that you are setting up a group is, like John said, because we're telling you that maybe you should think about that, and all you are going to do is push your podcast, it's just going to be white noise. You have to add value to people's lives. As we said during the Perfect Podcast Challenge, the Zig Ziglar quote, you give people what they want, and then you'll get what you want. Okay, I'm paraphrasing that probably, but there is that idea. With the group, what are you offering them? What are you giving them? And in return, if you're giving a lot of good stuff, they are going to want to check you out and learn more about you and learn about your podcast and become one of those, loyal followers that we have managed to grab and take a hold of and have a little bit of a following.
Yeah, and I think it'd be cool to break down just our strategy with how to make a podcast, the group, and kind of how we have decided to run it. Just so it would get the wheels turning for you out there listening with what maybe you would do with your group. I would, first of all, commit to at least a certain amount of time of investing into the group and know that it is part of your business. And so, you might need to say, okay, I'm going to spend 30 minutes a day in this group for 6 months, and I'm not going to be on the weekends or what, but set up a roadmap for yourself. But for us, when we started the How to Make a Podcast group, we knew that intentionality was important. So we decided, we're going to make sure this is a safe place for people to be able to interact with each other. We're not going to let people just spam, with their podcast episodes. We're not going to let people be mean to each other. We're not going to, be like, we set up all these different reasons of why it's going to be a safe place for you to learn and grow. So somebody that's been doing it for a long time could connect with somebody that just got going, and we could all get better together. And so community was that push. And so for us, we know that if we can give you a place to share your podcast, what we thought of as like, what things do podcasters want to be able to talk about or share about or do? And if you go in other podcasting groups, you see all kinds of follow for follow threads and, check out my podcast, or people going live with their podcast episode in the group. And it's just annoying. And so for us, we were like, okay, we want people to be able to do that, but we want to control it and put boundaries on it. So we have a thread on Thursdays where it's like, share your podcast. And that makes it where anybody wanting to share their podcast can do it inside of a thread, so it doesn't like mess with people's feeds. And then we thought, it would be cool to let people introduce themselves and connect with one another. It'd be cool to show each other's studios. It'd be cool to like review each other's podcasts. And so it's like, what things can you be doing to give value and show, like, you don't have to physically be the one reviewing people's podcast. Like, we're not listening to everybody's podcast, but we are giving you the opportunity to connect with somebody else and help each other out. And so what that ultimately does is it is the place where people want to be. That's where they want to hang out. It's like the bar or the coffee shop. It's like, we want to be that place where it's like, oh, you have a few minutes, let's go check out and see what's going on in that group. And then whenever we have done that and we've created that place, you want to share it with others, which is great. And then we can infuse bits of things after, we talk about Gary Vaynerchuk's book, Jab, 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 Right Hook. And jabbing is giving and giving and giving. And that right hook, sooner or later, is selling something or asking you to join a list or whatever. So every now and then in our group, we will have a product for sale or a template for sale or want you to watch our podcast but it's mixed in with all kinds of value. And if it doesn't serve you, the thing we're selling you, we won't sell it to you. And so, but with that hub comes all kinds of benefits.
Let me do a real world example here. And this is with our How to Film Weddings podcast. So we have been, it was, as we're recording this, it is the end of July, and in February of 2020, we launched a course, and we were asking people to buy for a long time. And so John and I decided, hey, we're going to take some time off of asking people to buy, and we are going to get back to just giving, and we're going to record podcasts with just us on it and sharing information and helping people's businesses and really taking that jab approach for quite a while, because we felt like we had, over asked, for quite a bit. And again, if you're selling something, there's no problem in asking people to buy your stuff, to check out your stuff. But if all you are doing is saying, buy my product, watch my podcast video, listen to if all you're doing is asking, then that's where the problem lies, right? And so we developed for How to Film Weddings, we developed a posing course, which wedding videographers need help posing their couples and stuff. I know you non-wedding people are like, well, what is that? That's weird. But it was a thing that we put together that we have been selling for a while, but we haven't super really pushed it out in the world very much, just because, we were trying to give a whole lot. And it's a $200 product that we have on sale because we just launched it not too long ago for 50% off. And yesterday, John sent an email saying, hey, here's our most recent podcast. here is a video testimony of a girl that had just purchased this posing course and her reaction to it and what she thought of it. And like, oh, by the way, would you like to check this out? Here's a link to the posing course. Asking people to buy after we had given so much. And yesterday, what'd we sell? 6, 7?
I think it was 6 or 7 of them.
Yeah. And so we made $700 in a day just because we had this massive email list with over 5,000, 8,000. I don't know. There's a lot of people on that email list, right? For How to Film Weddings. It's like 8,000, I think, somewhere up in there, asking them, hey, check this thing out. And so because we had developed a following, because we had made fans, we had created this product that a girl genuinely liked and genuinely said, this is very helpful to me. So she is a fan, and now her recommendation, now we have other peoples that have been following us, and because they trust us and now another person is vouching for us, they are more likely to buy. And so whenever you get these raving fans, whenever you have a group that you interact with, whenever you have an email list, whenever you are consistent with your content and it is good quality content, you are going to be able to sell things that fit within that niche that you have carefully curated. Yeah?
It's all great, yes. And it really, we're not afraid, and I think you said this and it was good, like we're not afraid to ask for something, but we just know that there's a balance. The jab, right hook. Gary Vee said that he actually wanted to call the book jab, right hook. like 20, where, and it's not give, take, it's give, and ask. And so in the group, like we are investing real time, looking at your podcast artwork, listening to your episodes, answering your questions, giving you value. And we know that percentage-wise, a large percentage of people will not purchase something from us, and that's okay. Like we make money off of, making killer content and sponsors wanting to sponsor us, and we get paid that way. But like the thing that we do is by building these, groups and communities and having this genuineness about us where it's like, yeah, we plan to make money with the podcast blueprint course and the how to make a podcast, and we are making money. Like that's received well and fine. But like if it feels like you're just trying to always and only sell things, like that's not cool. Like yesterday we sent a How to Make a Podcast email, and it just was a email telling people that the episode came out, check it out. And we sent that to our list, that's several thousand people at this point, and it got us a lot more listens of our podcast. Yes, but we ultimately feel like it was a free piece of content that helped people. It wasn't asking you for anything. It wasn't, and that's how with How to Film Weddings, how we've been doing as well. And when you have built this loyal following, July has been really fun for us in How to Film Weddings. We have our digital template shop now. And literally every single day, it's like hundreds and hundreds of dollars have been coming in, if not more than that, in our shop, where several $1,000s have come in this month just from people buying products that we put in there over a year ago. Because we've just, I mean, the numbers after a while, after you have so many thousands of downloads, and you've mentioned it calmly several times, people navigate over to your site, see your template shop, buy a couple things, you keep adding product, and it all like builds on itself. And so now we have more money coming in to pay Nick and myself, yes, but we take a percentage of that money and we're able to put it towards more advertising dollars, and we can grow more, which causes that same snowball effect to happen again and again. And so that's why I'm sitting here texting Nick yesterday, or telling my wife, and it's just like, look at these orders. I'm swiping through my phone and just like order, like just 100 orders this month or something. And it's because we have built an audience through community, and we've never disingenuously, if that's a word, come across and said like we're trying to sell you something that we don't think you need. And then the last thing that Nick said is that it's a product that people actually wanted. And so like we're able to build this because we're giving people something they want. We're not forcing them into our group. We're not forcing, hopefully you jump onto How to Make a Podcast group and you're interacting and you're enjoying it. And, maybe one day you become a customer of ours, or maybe you've already purchased our course or some of our templates or that sort of thing. But ultimately, if your heart is let's give, and then every now and then let's ask, you're giving people what they want. And then in return, like Nick said, like Zig said, you're going to get what you want. I talked a lot.
Yeah, you did. And so,
yeah,
excuse me.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah,
you
did.
weren't even
You
ready.
did.
Your throat was dry from just sitting there
know.
listening so long.
I know. I was soaking all of that info in. John has some great points about constantly giving and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things that, if you're not adding value to people's lives in somewhat, whether that's education, whether that's entertainment, wherever your podcast lives, if you're not adding value, then a Facebook group isn't going to help you. Your Instagram page, you're not going to be able to find the followers if you're not adding value to people. And then a thing that, we are going to continue to come back to, and the foundation of all of this, we talked about our niche and our pillars, your content. Your content matters. Your content is the king or the queen of everything that's out there. And so you can be the greatest person, and you can be really good at interacting with people and making them feel good and making them feel welcomed. And you might grow a little bit, but if your content is poor, then it doesn't matter. And so if you want to get, this hype of having fans that are going to follow you and, tune into your podcast and maybe buy your products and really grow, you need to have a quality content. That's going to be the king or queen of what you're going to be doing. So, John, do you have anything else you want to add?
I think that you wrapped it up very well. I think this conversation is one that will continue. We will continue in the future. And, if you're not a part of our Facebook group, join it, see what we're doing. You can lurk in there just to see how we're doing what we're doing. It does but get involved and keep learning and keep growing. And that's all I'd add.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much, everyone out there, for listening to the How to Make a podcast this week, where we're talking about, hyping up and getting that following that all of us want and desire, and how we have been able to do that in, 2 different podcasts. Before you sign off, before you turn off this podcast, we want you to head over to podcastblueprint.co. There you can find information all about our course. We have over 90 sections of information that can really help you grow and monetize. Yes, that's right. Monetize your podcast just as John and I have done it in not 1, but 2 podcasts. It's our entire blueprint system. So head over to podcastblueprint.co to check that out. Thank you again so much for listening. And until next time, we will see you.
See ya.